Hey Cheryl, can you hear me?
Hey,
I can now. Um, can can you silence and can you call myself?
Huh. We're ready to get this show on the road. Cheryl, you guys are muted.
We gotta do something. I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
All right, we ready to go? Paul, you're ready? I know we're started. We're already recorded. Recording. Okay, let's go ahead and call the 76 Entertainment Community Improvement District October 30, 2024 CID meeting to order. Go ahead and Billy, can you do prayer for us?
Hey, Mike. Did your father pass away this week?
A couple weeks.
I'll be praying for, because I just got, someone told me. Heavenly Father, we thank you for freedom. No, it is priceless, and we just ask. Uh, in the local, in the state, and also in this country, as we move forward, we trial and just different opinion, and just ask for your guidance. City council, for leaders at every levels in our city. We just thank you for their continuous we lift up Mike, Patrick, losing his dad. We just pray for their family. Surround your arm around him. Heavenly Father, as we come before you, we ask for your guidance.
Thanks, Billy. We're having some audio issues with you guys. It's really in and out. Like we'll hear it for 10 seconds and then it'll go blank for 20 seconds and then we'll hear it for 10 seconds and then blank for 20 seconds.
Okay, we've got IT on the way down.
It's
did that
the
on-
same problem I experienced on Monday.
They're like right now we can't hear anything.
Yeah. That part cut out.
So we probably want to hang on off on moving forward until IT gets there, yeah. Because I can't hear anything you guys are saying right now.
There might be different audio we can use.
Yeah.
But it needs to connect. We got new
Microphones.
microphones.
Yeah, like right now it's dead.
To the same as system microphone or something.
Be careful what you say about Paul because,
Well, always.
It does come in and out.
So.
He's talking, but we can't hear him.
Chuck,
yeah. Yeah, I can't hear anything now.
Holly, can you unmute yourself?
Yes,
Okay, so we can hear.
you guys are no longer on video.
Oh, wait, video. Okay, now we're back.
Oh, sorry.
Can't see.
Testing, can you hear us now?
Can hear you. Keep talking though, because now I don't think we can.
School.
No.
No, just me. Yeah, fix it. Some vacancies.
Or I called the helpline.
We lost video again.
So I think the city made some adjustments to their system and I think it just needs some more
Why
adjustment.
not?
That we can hear, we can't see.
Maybe it's just a cord's not plugged in.
Slow.
I always blame clerks.
Yeah, it might be.
Oh, it's supposed to be-
That's right, so we get so much. Remember, you could. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, they're not hearing everything, thank God.
The hard part is I don't know when I don't hear them.
They're not on video.
Mm-mm. I still think it's intermittent. I struggled with it on Monday.
Maybe easier for them to sign off and sign back on too. Sometimes that resolves issues.
Or could sign on via a laptop as long as when it comes time for a vote, it shines on. We got just one voter on, but they could put it on a laptop.
So.
All right.
It still is. So who's both dialed in? Yeah, so one of you has to.
I'm gone.
Okay, so now we're using Cheryl's or what? Whose laptop?
I can't hear him anymore.
No,
Can you hear us now?
Yes, we can now.
Is it?
Okay.
And now they're all lit up.
you just had to
There you
reboot the
go.
mics. Yeah, Brendan?
Yeah.
It's always that unplug, hold it out for 10 seconds and plug it back in remedy.
It's like 95% of what we do. So.
Oh,
Hey, you might want to stay here with me. I love the power.
sounds like budget cuts to IT or. It's that simple.
Okay, sounds like we got good audio now.
Yeah, reboot. Oh my gosh, so true. Okay, I think we're ready.
All right, Paul, you want to go ahead and do roll call, please?
Sure. So Chuck is present and Brian,
Yeah,
Mike,
here.
Billy is here. Kathy,
Here,
Mayor,
Here.
and is Alex there?
Here.
Thanks, Paul. Real quick before we get into the agenda, I do have a hard stop at 3 o'clock. I've got a meeting that I have to be on at 3 o'clock. So Brian, if we're not done, you may have to kind of take over for me.
Okay.
Okay. So item 1 or 2 on the agenda, approval of minutes from the September 25th and October 9th meeting. I assume everybody's had an opportunity to review the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve minutes for both September 25th and October 9th, unless there are adjustments that need to be made.
I'll make that motion.
I second it.
First and second, any discussion, any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor state by saying aye, please.
I,
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Thank you. Next item is a review of the CID financials.
Yeah, that would be me, Ben.
Okay.
Just a short update for you for September. The financials you've got, the overall revenues went up in the 76 CID fund by 4.7%, just under 5%. Sales tax is up 3.4% within the district. That's actually higher than what the city's experienced overall as a citywide. So that's good news. Expenses increased around 265,000. Most of that was capital, as expected. The net increase, well, let's back up just a little bit. The other piece of revenue that's gone up is interest earnings. And that's fairly significant increase from last year to this year, as you can see in the information. Cash right now is sitting at 10.4 million through September, and that's including an addition of a net of 726,000 in revenue that was added in the month. I'm not going to go through each page, but you can ask any questions you might have or email me. And the one thing to note is in the packet, you've got sales tax by month page, and you'll see October shows 0.6% increase. October's obviously not over. From an accounting sense, we've still got 2 or 3 more weeks before we close the month. So don't hold any any faith in that number right there, because it's not scrubbed yet. September is closed, so we're looking good for September, looking good for the year for the CID. And Chuck, that's what I got.
Thanks, Ben. Anybody have any questions for Ben? Any questions or comments related to any of the financials? Okay. Thank you. Move on to the next item, which is going to be update on the easement acquisition status and potential need for project design changes or changes to timeline or budget. Mike, you want to take the lead on this one?
Absolutely. So we've made some progress forward. We're at 22 of 49. I provided a sheet that has the similar red, yellow, green. We also sent that out. I did reorganize it from your email if you're looking at that one too. So we picked up this month, we picked up Carolina's Outlet, Botana's, and the 3 properties of the Becks, so the toy museum down in Dinosaur Museum and Dulce Vita Italian Ice. Jason is scheduled to come down here on Friday and pick up a couple more easements he's got in the works. Also, Holly Dodge and myself and Cheryl and Matt have been involved with negotiations with Cracker Barrel, IHOP, Olive Garden, GBI. We think they're going to be coming on very shortly, maybe the end of the day, and Wendy's. So Wendy's, and if I say something wrong, correct me. Wendy's and Cracker Barrel seem to be doing all right, and so IHOP is another subject that's coming up in section 9, and we'll discuss that. But the glass is good, right? We're almost half full. We're there. And again, if you have any connections to a Red or somebody wants to pick up and fill in there, that's important. We're also going to be discussing in just a moment on the next item that a field service contract amendment at that. Sooner or later, we're going to have to make the decision, and you know, with the board's guidance of when that is to have Jeremy look at doing something a little bit differently in front of some of these businesses that if we don't feel there's hope at any time. But I'm always positive. There's always hope with everybody. There's a couple that are kind of quiet right now, but more than happy to go line by line. But it's just an update, and we can provide. And that if you have Excel, when I sent that, I just hid columns so you can get even more detail into that as you see fit. Happy to answer any questions. And Jeremy's I'm sorry, and Jeremy's online too. If you have any questions about project design or changes to timeline or budget, so.
Michael, the green means we're getting them, like they've agreed to give them to us. We just don't have them.
Right, the green means it's got great potential that most likely, unless something comes up, so. For instance, Nolan and Babette, we're actually going to just take that one off. They believe they've signed it before. And then you can kind of see stop by landlord not available, but someone left a message. So at one time it was positive, same thing with landlord, signed the easement in 7 to 10 days. So yeah, that's a great, for instance, is Mr. Cushman. We've been in constant contact with him, and he's just navigating through with his attorneys. So it's not a hard no, I'll never sign.
Question is, Michael, is the Hughes property, is that one of the ones in red?
Green. It's in green.
It's green, okay.
And we met with her multiple times this month and multiple emails and provided everything that the city and Great River Engineering could to display that to good. So last I talked to her, she had nothing else to ask for at the time, but wanted to consider it with her family.
So for clarity, again, for those who we can't get these signatures on, then what we're facing doing is having to do a redesign in front of those properties, right? So that's going to incur more money. And then what will it look like in real life? Does that mean that we just stop with the decorative things? There's a desert, and then it picks up again with the people who agreed? Or what's the thought process there?
So a little bit, and Jeremy can backfill that in, is that we can, for the most part, and Jeremy can speak to the specific spots where we're really tight. We still can get the water line in and the infrastructure of the duck bank, but above ground, what that probably looks like is back to curb, plain sidewalk, or very less detailed duck.
So it looks, so Jeremy, like I'm trying to paint a picture in my mind what that would look like. So like maybe here we've got some very pretty stamped concrete. I don't really remember exactly what we're doing. So you'd be walking on the sidewalk and then all of a sudden it's plain Jane concrete sidewalk, and then it goes back to stamp again.
Well, no, I think the standard that we're using is going to be an imprinted concrete, but to Michael's point, instead of having some space between the travel lane and the sidewalk, which is what we were striving for, and that allowed us to create a sidewalk that was a little more sinewy, we would have no space. That sidewalk would probably have to be on the back of the curb. From a design perspective, some solutioning we might consider would be, I mean, we could narrow the sidewalk a bit. I'd rather not change the standard that we have, because I think it's 8 foot's really the minimum for multimodal. And we're very comfortable with where we are, but if we are out of space, we just have to squeeze things down. We would certainly lose the ability to define that corridor the way we are in other places, with as much landscape and certainly if there were amenity areas, those would disappear in those areas for sure.
So Journey, and I don't know how much work this would take, is it reasonable to ask if maybe at our next meeting, we could have a visual of what that would look like, just on a map?
Yeah.
To let us know visually, so we can see if we're forced to pull the trigger, this is what it's gonna look like.
I mean, I think I could do, as long as you won't shoot me if it's a Jeremy sketch. But to your point, yes, I could show you probably pretty easily if these properties, if there are certain properties that are just not gonna sign, how we would be constrained. I could certainly share that with you next meeting for sure.
Thank you. I think that would help the board as we're making decisions of when we're gonna pull a trigger. Another question I had, and I know it's not ideal, but looking at alternatives, is there any way we could do this in phases? For example, well, are we allowed to go like put in the water line? Or are there certain things that we could start on construction in January without having all the rest of the easements completed?
I would have to look, Mayor, honestly, and make sure. I mean, there were some places in the smaller right-of-way areas where our duct banks were pretty tight, in that trying to stay in the right-of-way. We made every attempt to stay in the right-of-way where we could. It is genuinely possible to do some of the most disruptive work in a separate contract. What we suffer when we do that is we lose our economy of scale.
Sure.
So it becomes a, an undergrounding of utilities, and you guys did that in segment 3. I mean, when that undergrounding of utilities was occurring, that became a very big effort. And then you came back with the sidewalk on top. And so there is some possibility certainly that you could break the contract into pieces. To that end, the way that this construction documentation set has been prepared is we did it in sheet series, specifically because different contractors put prices together for different component series of a set. And so the utility series is separate from the water series, and those are construction document sheets. And so we did ourselves a few favors trying to look ahead to potentially a possibility that you've laid out on the table today.
So without spending a lot of money, I would just like to be proactive and for the board to start looking at what are some of our worst case scenarios, right? It sounds like the ones in red. If we can start construction on part, I know we lose economy of scales and those things. And there again, I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know how feasible it is, but if we could start some of this construction in February, I don't know how our funding would work with that, but if we could start some of this, because even if we don't get these signatures, we're going to do some of this work, correct?
I certainly hope so.
We've got deadlines, yeah? What,
Yeah, I mean, we have governor's money on it. We have, MoDOT has asked for a timeline for distributing of the $6 million, roughly funds. We also have, our grant set that are behind this. I mean, time is of the essence. Some of those grants won't hold correctly without easements, just so you all know. So, they won't issue that if that attaches to easement property. That's one of the things you do along with the RER, and we're still working through the environmental review.
are
Sorry.
you saying that we would lose grants potentially because we couldn't get all the
We
easements?
could.
Well,
So
that's,
we'd ask for timing on that. You know, they're asking us now how to distribute funds, and so Jeremy works.
Just tell a cashier's check or they could wire it.
Oh, yeah. I wish, yeah. That would make things really simple. So
what is the drop dead date, Michael?
they don't have a drop dead on us because
Drop dead.
our drop dead really is like, we need to be rolling in January,
So to
February, like
do that, we have to make.
clean this up and then.
Move forward by when? Like to go with or without, to go without all
What do you
the,
think, Jeremy? I mean, like, I know January and February are normally the worst months of building anyways. Could you push it? In the end, we were looking at the businesses and trying to disrupt them the least. And what's holding us up, unfortunately, is people's reluctance to sign something that they believe. And we've thrown everything we can at this, and I really do believe that. I mean, there are many here that are still gonna go, just a little bit of time, but we've set those timelines. We said, hey, in August, or hey, in July, hey, and
Right.
this, and we, cities bluff, or.
so what is it today? What's the drop dead today? Is it by November 15th?
Oh, you won't get all these by November 15th.
But my question is, for us to make a decision to move on without them.
And
what's the
redesign.
date? Yeah,
What date would you need Jeremy to redesign, and then how long for you to redesign? That's important. Working backwards, it's her finalized document.
Yeah, so we are, I mean, tomorrow, we are done, we are essentially done with the documents. And what that means is that if we have to redesign, it just depends on what the scope of the redesign is. Now, granted, I know that there are some places that are gonna be worse than others. But I mean, we would have to be head down. Gosh, I mean, we would have to be head down for probably 8 weeks just to get things buttoned back up. That would put us, if you know something by the end of the month, if you know something by the end of November, we'd have to do, we could maybe do December and January, with putting something out in February, and all these things are sort of nebulous for me because I'm not entirely sure what the scope would be. With, I just have every faith that there'll be some more that come into line. Just like the city team, and the city teams been working so hard on this.
I guess that's been just for the good of the board, and thanks for letting me not monopolize the question time for a little bit, but at some point, first of all, I'm gonna ask Holly a question just about what is within our purview. I know we're trying to be nice and coaxing and kind and team spirit, and it's for the good of the community, and it's not working on some. And so, Holly, do you have experience, like things that you've seen other communities have been able to do, at least, the right of way work, right? That we can proceed and not potentially risk our grants? I guess it depends what the grants are for, if it's for the below ground or above ground. So I get that. But what's within our abilities to be able to, like, for example, I'm just going to speak a little bit politically incorrect for a moment. Thought that were being, but stay on land that the city has owned forever, and we have a tenant there that we were being delayed by a tenant, and I'm trying to figure out what in residential real estate, right? It's the landowner that makes a decision on what happens on the land. And so I think we've given great deference and extraordinary patience to some of the tenants, if you will, that we've got, it is tenants that we've got on our land. And it looks like maybe we're making some progress there, but I'm like, at some point, we have to be able to say, okay, let's hope some more come in, but we're going. Right? And I'm trying to figure out, when do we do that? Because this will never get done if we don't do that. And it's unfortunate because we're actually going through this with some of our neighborhood improvements where you've got 20 homeowners out of 150 that are holding up an entire public works project that's going to be able to provide better fire safety with better water pressure. And that's a detriment to the community. So I guess that there's a philosophical angle to this as well as a legal angle. And I don't know, Holly, if you've got experience in other communities so that we at least as a board can talk about what our options might be.
So last night, I had a conversation with one of my coworkers, James Newell, who is helping, and I know this is a dirty word, but condemnation or eminent domain, whichever comfortable term you're used to, it is an appropriate option, is not a negative option. We are talking about kind of three big aspects. One, the undergrounding, which is clearly within the tools allowed and usable by the city. The other is you're talking about safe pedestrian way. I think that's some of our grant option that we have to be careful with utilizing the appropriate action. But with those grants, they do allow for and contemplate a very commonly used tool by cities of condemnation and eminent domain. There is an idea that is supported by the statute and by the Constitution that provides for cities when they need to make their right-of-way safer, when they need to make their right-of-way better. And truly, undergrounding is safer because you're taking out those poles that people can drive into. You're adding other safety mechanisms that make it more pedestrian friendly, but more pedestrian safe. I mean, while we keep talking about pedestrian friendly and pedestrian right of way, we have pedestrians walking there all the time. So it's not really just giving them a pretty place to look at. You're creating zones and areas in which they can traverse from place to place, increase use, increase tourism, increase spending in a safe way. And that is an overriding and overarching concern. That's part of why we have those pedestrian crossway expenditures, but that's also all the other aspects of the pedestrian way. So utilizing eminent domain is an appropriate mechanism. As to answer your second phase question of our tenants, I believe all of our lease agreements do require that we retain the right to utilize easements for upgrades, and that would be what we are doing. If a tenant is disagreeable about it, and certainly any construction is not a part of quiet enjoyment. But if you look at the language in our easements, all aspects are dealt with as best we can. But improvements have a bump in the road, and that bump is the construction. If we could get everyone to sign, whether through utilizing a tool like condemnation. So understand, once you go to that condemnation hearing after you've made your good faith offers, then and in a lot of cases, we find that most recently in a jurisdiction, we got half of our easements sending out that 60-day required letter that in 60 days we'll file the condemnation. We got half of them turned in. They signed the documents and turned them in. So then at condemnation, the question, the hearing after that 60-day letter is whether or not this is a public purpose. And this is clearly a public purpose. This is an area where we unfortunately know that there are grave concerns. This is a high trafficked area that we need to protect our pedestrians. And we, of course, have an aesthetic ability to upgrade it. And this is utilizing a tax, which that's the whole point in the tax. So we can go ahead with our tenants and utilize our right to provide for the easement and record the easement. And then we would deal with any of their objections appropriately.
And then for the non-tenant properties, for the properties we don't own, Is the process the same? It's a condemnation hearing. Does that take, like, there's probably notice and filing times, and that's gonna back us up too, but
It can be compounded. So in a recent incident where we were doing this type of phase, or like your Hiawatha phase, you have to do the appraisals, you have to make the good faith offer. That's kind of the 60-day notice. You have, and you have to base it on something. So it's the value. The value is per square footage. It's kind of the same along this corridor. So then after the good faith offer, the 60-day notice, then you have set the condemnation hearing. At that point, when the court approves the condemnation, the city is able then to proceed with their act. There is then ongoing, what is your compensation? So that's the other hearings you hear about. Those can take a while, but those do not stop and prohibit. It's once you get an order of condemnation, then the city may proceed.
so we have to pay them something to get the easement, right?
Make a
Fair
good faith offer,
compensation.
and it's based on so for this, we've got 1, construction easements. Those are temporary in time, temporary in scale. So those are pretty minimal. And then it's the long-term taking, whether it's taking a portion of the property or the upgrade of the property. Now, the fact that they have a co-occurring benefit is not a consideration in a condemnation, but you also have to pay for the appraisals and the litigation. I mean,
Well, is that something we should talk about? I mean,
I think you're at a point where you've got holes in your
Yeah.
plan. And I think if we've got areas where the hole is, if it is an area that, as Journey described as tight, if we cannot do the work, you can't underground and then go back up ground for a block or half a block or quarter of a block. Technically, that is super high liability, and I'm not sure contractors would want to get involved with that. You could potentially layer or split out your contracts. So you could bid it for the undergrounding, like Journey said, that may be minimalized. That could get you started on it. Overall, though, I do think it's fair to notify everyone that if you have to go that route, if you have to break out your contract, not only will it probably mean more cost, but it absolutely will mean more disruption to each individual property. It means us coming back and putting in a temporary sidewalk, then putting in the better sidewalk. So understand that means, as opposed to trying to hit it and quit it, getting it done very efficiently, it means we will be doing it in constant phases with constant construction, and that's a disruption and a harm to all within that area.
Thank you.
Is the duck bank not in the right of way?
For the most part, it is. That is
What
the
area?
correct answer. Well, like Twinkle Inn's a great example. We need to move a retaining wall. He doesn't want to, or it's been slow to come around. And so you would have to do something there. There's multiple locations, Journey can tell you, that need to be.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you one example, many along there.
So is it obstructions in the right of way that we can clear because of our right to use the right of way? Or is it that we just don't have a right to that portion?
We don't have enough area to push it in and put it in, so we need to widen out. As you remember, many of the conversations all the way from the beginning is the right of way varies along there from 90 foot to 60 foot to all types of stuff. So in spots where it comes in really tight, it becomes quite an issue. Jeremy, you want to speak more to that? More welcome to.
Sure. In some of the places, we just have a whole melody of things that happen at the same time. We may be undergrounding utilities, and that sounds like it's simple enough, except that when you open up a trench the size that we're talking about, that's 8 feet wide and sometimes 8 feet deep, you're disturbing a lot of grade. And so in certain cases where we have to have we have to put a retaining wall back so that we can then retain the grade that we've disturbed. And so that's one example. That's just one. And there are other places where we have storm sewer that we're retaining, we're not disturbing, that's already under the ground and probably is, we don't take a lot of those kind of facilities, we don't see them so much until we're designing. And then when we're designing, we take those things into consideration, trying to minimize our costs, take advantage of infrastructure that's in place. And so we've kind of moved that utility corridor around a bit so that we didn't disturb everything in the world that there was to disturb. So those are just some examples anyway. When the right of way is tight, we've been very judicious about trying to stay within the right of way as it is described today, with just temporary construction easements on properties where we're just tying back to grade or what have you. But we also tried to keep the utility corridor out of the roadway. We always had the option, I suppose, to put the utilities underneath the road pavement, but that's just not good practice. I think Michael would probably, faint dead away if I said, Michael, let's just run that utility corridor under the lane. It just doesn't work well. We end up with pavement failures and things that are long-term issues. And so.
And Journey, if
That's
I can
fine.
interrupt there, I just want to
Please.
point two things out that you're talking about. If you put the right of way, if you put those undergroundings in the roadway, any city that you've gone to that you see those big metal covers on part of the road that you go bumpity bump over and they fail and they fall in, that is what happens when you underground in the roadway. Anytime anyone wants to make a change, that disrupts the roadway. So when you see those one little area that then stops traffic, which is a big consideration with 76, and so you're going to see that every time as a disruption in the roadway because they have that right to get into their property and or failings and or upgrades. The other thing I do want to point out is when you're talking about stormwater, that is a safety factor. And that is a safety determination in the whole overall plan. It is very important that we are not directing water so that it is a road failure.
Right.
And we also need to say that our utility partners, that's not the agreements that they've already made with us, so we'd have to go back to negotiations with them. They're very particular about being able to access their joints and their connections and so on and so forth.
Yeah, we don't want to go that route. So is the $1 million question for the board become, is there a willingness to either offer some compensation to the remaining holdouts and go through the condemnation process so that we can have a full-on, consistent, continuous, contiguous project? Is it worth that investment to do that and to go through the contortions to do that? Or is it better that the finished product ends up being fits and starts? You've got this beautiful 8-foot sidewalk, and then maybe we have to go down to a 5-foot sidewalk that's plain, and then back to a beautiful 8-foot sidewalk. I mean, I think it just comes down to, are we willing to invest money to compensate some people for the condemnation? And I don't know how much money that would be. Right? We really don't know at this point, but just the concept.
For some of these property owners, is the holdup money, they want to get paid money?
No one specifically said that. So
We have to condemn.
no one has specifically said that it's because I'm not getting paid. People have asked if they're getting paid. Of course, all the restaurants have talked about getting paid, but so too, the restaurants, and how I can speak to this a little bit, they also expect compensation for disruption of time, which is hard to judge. We've wiggled through that pretty well so far. Or is the question, you contemplate this for a moment in January 1st, if you're not happy where it is, and we know we're not going, I know it pushes time out a little bit. And January 1st, you say condemnation, let's go.
But that'll take another 2 months.
Correct. Right, it's whatever your appetite is, so.
At least 2 months, because Jeremy's got to do redesign.
Yep.
We've got to go through the court process.
Oh, yeah, if you go condemnation, what, well, that's the one good thing about going that direction.
That's
So,
right. So we just have the court process, but that's a minimum of 2 months, right?
Well, we're at 2 months of a redo.
Yeah, I guess that it's what do you want the end product to look like at the end of the day? Is it worth going down that road and finding and just doing the condemnation process? I think it'd be good to hear from the board on that. Nobody wants to answer that one. I get it. It's an uncomfortable conversation.
Just to clarify with regard to the condemnation, the 60-day letter generally follows the ordinance authorizing acquisition, and then you send out the 60 days. And then, as Holly said, you have to send out a 30-day good faith offer that's based upon an appraisal. So you have to build in time for appraisals to occur right now on 27 properties. And then at the end of the 60 days, assuming you've done your 30-day good faith offer, you can file your petition in circuit court. You have about another month or so of various notices, time frame to give notice. And then you're subject to the court schedule to get the jurisdictional hearing. So in a good
6
moving
months
case
minimum.
docket, you're about 4 months optimistically from the day you send out your 60-day notice. And that's assuming that property owners councils don't try and leverage the situation, seek a continuance, et cetera. If that's the case, you can, the weeks can just tick by and you've probably missed your construction season this year.
I do think we are in a better position because we've answered. I don't think that from what I've looked at that we have any problems with ownership, identification of ownership. So I don't think we have publication issues in regards to that.
So then now it comes down to, so that's 6 months, 6, 7, 8 months, probably, right? All in to do condemnation. So then maybe that's not practicable. So then instead, do we just divvy up the names that are remaining on the list between board members? Because the amount of time and hours spent, Michael, Cheryl, Matt, the easement company, the hundreds of hours of conversation and time, meeting with folks. And I'm not saying it's not worth it to do that because, we need to be doing that. But at some point you're banging your head up against the wall and maybe the city person being the front person isn't the best strategy. And so are there opportunities, like I know Gail, you've helped with some, I think Steve, you probably did too, Ann. What else do we need to do to divvy up the remaining names and put the full court press on from other than a city face? Is that a practical solution?
I'm just a former board member. I think maybe the mayor mentioned a while ago, one of the first steps I would do is have Jeremy do the drawing, to see where these properties are, see how that changes the look of that down through there. And so you really get a sense. It may not be as disruptive if the sidewalk stays the same width, even though it goes against the curb or maybe a slight greener. Even the idea of putting one of the barrier fences between the roadway and that gives you a consistent look of going through that before you head down to the condemnation and that. The other option is to look at, we had those early discussions about doing the segments 1 and 2. Look at segment 2, see how many are in that, start that process and get things underway. I know that's not ideal, but you would at least get things underway in January and they could see what's going on with
Yeah,
it.
I agree.
And they could really have a better sense of maybe down the road from that point to there. But first off, I would look and see how that changes the overall look down through there. My guess is it will be pretty minimal. And the sidewalk stays the same width. I don't know the guest will notice that experience changing that much from that point through there. The property owner sure will, because it's not going to look near as good, but that's their fault. They're not signed up. The idea to me of condemnation and paying people for the right of way when no one else has, I think is a real concern.
Oh, I agree. And that's why I thought I better raise it because it's heavy,
Yeah, I agree.
but we should talk it through anyway.
I think Jeremy said she could do that rendering. I think for the board, that would be ideal to see what that is. Get a sense of how much is broken up and how much is not. Just
And Jeremy, how long did you say that it might take to put something like that together?
I don't think that that's gonna take a real long time, and I can have that in a couple of weeks. Based on maybe the latest, and if Michael, if you'll send me the latest right of way acquisition map, I can apply that to what we've got and take a look. A couple of weeks, I could see kind of what the impacts are. But bear in mind, it won't be I love the word rendering because it conjures up all kinds of greatness. What I will do is I'm going to be very practical about that and do an overlay for you so you can see what the areas are and what the impacts would be. It won't be pretty. It'll just be practical.
Is that outside your scope, and what does that look like? I know we're towards the end of your scope.
We are, yeah. It is outside my scope. That was one of the reasons that I said, if you'll send that to me, I have no problem doing that so that you have your arms around this. I will do that, me. That would sort of be Jeremy apart from Great River. That would be Jeremy at night, with an overlay. And the reason I'm even telling you that is because yes, we are, we have completed for the most, for all intents and purposes, we've completed our project, our scope, but this project is so terribly important to us and so terribly important to you. And we're all in. I mean, we're completely saturated. I want to make sure that you have whatever tool you need to make the decisions that you need to make.
We appreciate your relationship in that. Thank you for.
And then Chuck, maybe we could schedule a special meeting,
Yeah,
right, to go over that, the drawings that she's gonna do so that we get a better handle on that. And in the meanwhile, on a parallel track, we divvy up the remaining names. I'm grasping at straws here to get help and support on trying to put some more friendly community pressure on the holdouts.
Is
But
there,
keep in mind, the next regularly scheduled meeting is November the 12th, I believe. The board set that several months ago to
Oh.
avoid the conflict from Thanksgiving, whatever that Wednesday
Oh,
is
okay.
of that.
Maybe
week.
that's.
The other thing,
13th.
just to kind of add on to Kathy's, I think, or November 13th, I guess. But I think a 7 or 8 month would be the wheels have come off the wagon type of timeline.
Yeah,
After you file your petition, then you have to serve everyone. Even if you don't have to do publication notice, you have to give at least 10 days notice before the court hearing. That's assuming nobody asks for continuance. Once you have the court hearing, then the judge appoints 3 commissioners, and then they go out and they physically view the properties and hold a hearing. And then they come back and then they render a report. And it's not until that report gets filed and the city actually pays the money into court that you actually get ownership of the property or the easement. So in an optimistic time frame, you're at 4 months. But until so you have to balance, even if you're an optimistic person, say 4 months, how does that interact with Jeremy's time frame to
Yeah.
redesign if she says 8 weeks?
Mhm.
I don't know what the answer is there.
So is condemnation off the table then? Because it just sounds impractical.
What about just proceeding down parallel paths? I don't necessarily disagree with Holly that, if the city passed an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of the properties through negotiations and condemnation if necessary, then they get the 60-day notice letter in the mail. Maybe people like, wow, I guess the city's not joking around. They're Jeremy, is there any way to, since you've already got, so you've got 22 of 49, so I guess you're missing 27. So you've already got those designed completely. Is there any way to add those back in as add alternate change orders down the road if people start seeing what their neighboring business owners doing? They're like, hey, I want to get on that bus. And it's like, well, can you add that back in to the contract, or are you not able to slice and dice your design and construction contract that way?
It sort of depends, Paul, on what occurs on the various parcels, honestly. Yeah, the slicing and dicing and adding things in willy-nilly, parcel by parcel, when you have several parcels in between, can be problematic unless it is truly, amenity based. If I could get infrastructure in, then the adults could be things that come later, a sitting space or, or what have you. I think the key here is knowing how much space is available to me for the pedestrian way. Because that pedestrian way is 8 foot wide on both sides of the street. And so just depending on which parcels are which. So I'm as anxious as you guys are, honestly, to just overlay this thing and say, all right, let's have a good hard look at it. But adults on a willy-nilly basis, not so great. But I'll reserve my opinion until I know exactly what the infrastructure looks like in that case.
Okay.
So,
Just 2 cents there. It's still the same amount of time to get that condemnation. And so if you have key places that are not on board, you may want to start that process parallel to the other thing is, have you thought about having a hearing, specifically inviting, not a hearing, but a meeting at a time most likely to have those owners available? Do it by video as well, so they can see and hear these aspects. Maybe they're not tuning in on the 1:30.
Well, I don't know I mean, we're having face-to-face meetings with people, at their property, and Michael and the team have brought the plans, and, that's like up close and personal, which is way better than a public meeting might be. So I don't know that would serve.
The reason I was suggesting it is those who have signed and those who support the process, those who are paying in on the process could be also present to say, hey, get on board. I'm on board. Look what this is bringing. Sometimes having that meeting with everybody at the same place can help.
Okay.
so Kathy, you asked 2 questions. One is who talks to who? And it's condemnation on the table. And what's the goal? The goal is signatures as quick as you can get, right?
Yeah.
So I want you to consider this. I think Larry, you and Kathy should try to meet these business people at their business.
Are you being facetious right now with me?
I think that's how you build a relationship with the folks. Okay. And and also you've got the ability to cheerlead on one side, and you've got the ability on the other side to give bad news, which is, here's what we have to do to get this project to work. And take an alderman, take one of these folks with you. But, and that doesn't degrade what these guys have done. But I think it's, if you want to get the most attention, you two will show up then.
Okay.
Because the reason nobody's talking to them is because people don't have a relationship with them, right?
Right.
I
And
talked to who I had a relationship with.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so this is your opportunity, but it's also, what's your goal? Signatures soon. So, I think that in general, that's pulling out the big guns. You know, the big guns.
Do you know what? And I appreciate that. And I didn't mean to be as flip as I may have sounded there. But the only reason I said it that way was because I actually contemplated that when these guys were going out, like maybe I need to go, but it almost looks like a posse, like an intimidation front. Because I've looked at the names, I'm like, I don't have relationships with these people, and I don't want it to be more official,
Let's see if
Right.
pretty quick.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll think about it. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that could come across as, I don't know.
Mike, if you look at the list here, if they were gonna do that, are we talking to the people that 8 on the top is red, or is it yellow? It's a green, also green.
The red, so like,
There's there-
great, for instance, is like Mike Patel, right?
Yeah. I guess too.
If somebody could arrange that conversation where he would come in and talk to Kathy, I'm sure she would
Oh,
do that at any
I
moment,
would
just
hope.
like I would do it.
So the one arm is Mike Patel, one arm is
Dennis,
Dara Henley with the Bigfoot. But the big thing is also there's one is by the Butterfly Palace is, I know that's Brian's company, but it doesn't impact what we're doing here, even if we don't get that sign up. But I think the big thing is there's 8 of them out there and 2 of them is Mike Patel and one of them is Dara Henley, one of them is different. But IHOP and what was the other one that used a Twinkle?
IHOP and Twinkle and.
That's across the street each other.
Yeah. And we'll talk about IHOP shortly. He just doesn't want to get.
So really, when you look at this list, Michael, the most important, if they were gonna do like aggressive, it is the red, not the yellow or green, because you guys been working with these guys and they're getting ready, they're just waiting for you guys to sign it and all that stuff. There's nothing like.
Or another great one would be Mr. Grocott. It was met with him, everything was good. At the last couple phone calls I've had have been no return, so.
well, I'll call Grocott.
Yeah,
So that I can do easy. I guess the other
I mean,
thing.
that'd be 5 properties by itself.
Okay, I'll call Grocott today, right? So I guess the other conundrum, the awkward position I'm in is we've got regulatory enforcement responsibilities at the city. And some of these properties may have some enforcement issues going on right now. And now if I'm showing up and saying, you know, hey, sign this piece of paper kind of a thing, you know what I'm saying?
then don't go see those people.
Yeah. So there's some challenges there, but well, but-
You know, and it's also okay to hear what they don't like. Okay. They'll feel better about it. You just gotta rise above it. But if you want signatures. Yeah.
I agree with Billy in that, you know, the red's obviously the most important. Yes, it's awkward that our company's on the red. I get that.
like who should talk to those?
I am. But I stand behind last meeting. I asked, which of these unsigned properties are going to affect this redesign the most? And those that are going to most greatly affect the redesign are those bright red ones that we need to go after, because, you know, the point is there's nothing going on in front of our place. I mean, there's widening sidewalk and underground. So yes, it's unfortunate, but on the same token, it's not going to impact the grand scheme of things. Those that are going to, that's Grocott, that's IHOP, that I'm,
Yeah, Twinkle,
you know,
yeah.
those are the beaming red ones that we have to get. And then when the overlay happens, like Steve said, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it just wasn't gonna be as pretty or cool there, but it still looks like everything else around it. Nobody's gonna know the difference. Those are the ones that we gotta target.
And at the end of the day, I think Jeremy would say this too. Every one of them is important. We wouldn't be asking if we didn't have to ask. Like, that is the truth. So, you know, even your property, you're like, hey, all you need is this. Well, that's where the water tower is. Without you, we don't have water. So they gotta do something to make that happen, to make that connection go. So.
It had a temporary easement 2 or 3 years
Yeah.
ago for that, just that
Right.
specific thing, and nothing got done with it.
Right.
So.
But they'll get that worked out. That's beyond me. So,
Well, in segment 2 of the property is Mike Patel.
yep,
So if you can get that.
that's 2 in a row. Yep.
Yeah, there are 2 in a row, but what's interesting is all of a sudden segment 2, we can move forward to segment 2. Because there's one out there and it's not, there's 16,
Well, that's.
which is
Does anybody here have a relationship with him?
Mike Patel or,
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked to him and he's got partners in Dallas.
Yeah.
I had Rich Crowell talk to him and Rich said, I'll come back with signature. I'll let you know what happens today. Rich never called me, so
Right. Matt's talked to him a little bit, if you want.
He had never made contact according to him.
Rich hasn't.
Yeah.
He sat down with the week and a half, or he told me he did, said, was going to say, I'll call.
So what's the problem, Mike Patel, when signed, what was it?
Partners.
The partners-
Is the words we got. I've never met the gentleman, never reached out to the city by any means.
So he's the same guy that owns Dairy Queen, how's that? Mike Patel.
No, that's Raj.
Okay.
Well, I'll just tell you, as the mayor, I'd be more than happy to meet with any of these people. Because I think it's down to, in fact, I don't know if it would be more effective to have Jeremy's overlay, even though it won't be pretty. But we're down to the point where here's what we're going to do. And there's really we're going down 3 different roads. We're either gonna do all of this together with their blessing. And maybe we throw out something the board's talking about is best interest for the city is condom. We can fight that process. What was the third choice?
Skip over them entirely. If
Oh,
they
yeah,
don't
or
sign.
just leave theirs alone,
If we're
and this
able.
is what everybody else is gonna look.
Great choice investment. I'm just making sure I'm on the right one. I don't think they are a red. They have submitted a rewrite and we're working on that one. So I don't think that one should be a red, or am I missing something?
No, that's fair. It was read because of.
Because
didn't
of an
have-
initial conversation.
Yeah, we didn't
I-
have a connection at all. So, and you made
So
the.
that
connection.
one I don't think is a red. I think it could even get to a green very soon.
Down to 7.
Hold on.
But I think it's important to say that
So
red
track,
means that it's like impossible. Like we had no thought of how to get it, or it seemed like it was at a complete impasse, right? That nobody would ever budge one way or other. So yellow and green, there's still stuff that they're still dragging. So, right.
so on the red for GBI, he's should be signing today. So there's 2 that should not be red.
Thank you.
GBI, right?
46.
6.
Okay,
Like I said, there's hope. Like, and that if I was just the optimist, I'm asking, try till January 1st and then push. I think the other things we have to talk about today will help move that conversation along. The letter from Holly will help be the first line in there. And if you wanted to do something in parallel, like Paul said, to start setting it up, that would be smart. That's my and it's board, it's.
And can we get do you have any additional information about how and how much are we at risk of losing certain grants?
So I don't know what they'll pull back or what they won't, that's its own beast in itself. I would say if you didn't do it for a year, there's a possibility, especially with that government, because they're asking how we want it allocated today, like literally yesterday, exactly how we want it allocated. So what we did is we started allocating it in January underneath Jeremy's suggestion that they'll be okay. You know, they don't want to take out of their account till they have to, just like everyone else. So, and if we have to ask for a little bit of, we won't create bad tension. So, and MoDOT's running that, and we still have RER that has been never ending to get all this stuff locked in, even though that money shouldn't be tied to that. We want it all clean for the grants that are there.
So action step.
So really, segment 2, all of a sudden, Mike Patel is the only one that is. Well,
Yeah, and Bigfoot, like if somebody can get Bigfoot to,
I told you,
I emailed them and everything.
I know, he and Emma does not answer phone or, I just, okay, I'd be happy to meet with them.
Jeremy, we talked about Bigfoot for a second, and we can surpass it, can we not? Easily?
We
Okay,
we can get by them, except for the very corner. We're making an improvement on the road. And I think there's a temporary construction easement, just a bit of temporary construction easement, but we don't have to disturb them in any way. We're just tying back to the driveway. And I need a little bit of temporary construction easement, but I can bypass them completely.
Right, and that's just so I'm clear, because I went out to every single one of these businesses. That was never the intention, but there will be a time if they cannot sign that we're here we are, that we need to start to adjust.
So we don't need, you're saying that we don't really need to talk to Daryl?
Oh, we need to, she's saying we still have to. There's a temporary
I'd
interim.
be happy to walk, to meet with someone there.
So who are you gonna meet with? Bigfoot?
Yeah, Daryl Henley.
That's Billy.
I already told that Michael last time, so I just let you know.
Yeah.
I told you, so I'd be happy to meet with them.
Make sure,
I'm
make
not
sure
sure
that
that-
you have the updated, please
revised,
make sure that you
yeah.
have the updated exhibit.
Exhibit.
Well, I make sure that one of you guys shows up with me.
Yeah, like, and that's, again, like, if you need to meet offline with somebody to get the conversation started, more than welcome to Teams it, come out in person, bring all the documentation, because you have to have the brand new stuff. It's so important. We can also show the overall map. I mean, I've done it multiple times on a parking lot. We can do it again, so. IHOP's an agenda item. If Chuck, if you're okay with it, I'll speak to IHOP for half a second. We can try to help you with some of that time there.
Yeah, go ahead.
So IHOP met with us. It was a positive conversation. We walked away from it feeling really good. Their lawyer reached out to Holly and said after careful consideration that they would not be giving any square footage, but they wouldn't be opposed to where we were. The problem of that is that the ribbon where it is on this person's property, and we need that little piece that's there. They said absolutely not. They referred to it as a banner originally. We got clarification through Holly, because now it's between Holly and Mr. Petrowski, the lawyer that's there, and Holly make sure I stay in bounds. And so I also reached out to the next landowner and mentioned to Jeremy that what would it look like if we had to move it 5 or 10 feet down the road, and it's not possible to make it go. And that's where that stands, and that's the update for that. But he's adamant he's not ever giving anything to the city.
So, and Jeremy was nodding, saying, yes, we could move it
Yep.
5 or 10 feet.
If the next property owner agrees to that.
Which
Yep.
And that, Mr. Cushman, which I've been in contact with, and he's the one that got us the introduction with IHOP with Chris, and I greatly appreciate that. And we're letting those two talk it out just a little bit. So.
Cushman and the neighboring IHOP.
So he got us the introduction. We appreciate that. We appreciate that he doesn't want it on there. And at the same time, I proposed it to him. What would it look like? Think outside the box, think the wheel turn.
And
And
just
we
to
should get some
clarify, the information we received regarding the IHOP property is that the client was unwilling to grant any easement that would permanently give away a portion of his property. So however you interpret that as to there would have to be funds paid, I don't know.
I want to make a clarification on the IHOP property as well. While we, two things, there is a utility easement already in place in the exact area where we need to land the overhead structure. So I would just throw that out in the mix because it's already there. There's already an easement. It is a utility easement. So that, might be riding a line a bit. And then the second thing is all improvements were moved into the right of way in that area, with the exception of where the utility corridor goes across the drive. And we need a temporary easement so that we can tie the grade back. But we improved their drive. If you're familiar with IHOP, you know that coming off of 76 into IHOP, is really difficult, and we improve that driveway access considerably with regard to the grade and how the driveway works. Just based on the kind of improvements that we're making and tying the grade back. So I want to make that very clear that we're not impacting them. We're not taking any spaces. Everything's within the right of way. 1, 2, there is a utility easement already in place in the area where we want to land the overhead structure. But if we needed a bit of easement right where we're landing that, it's not in the parking lot, it's in a green space, it's on the corner of the property. And then finally, while there are no property impacts, we are improving their driveway. And so that's a positive. There's only positive things. Just want to say that.
That information, I believe, was passed on to them. So, and that, to any of them that I've been a part of, that has been expressed. These are upgrades. We are, in any area that we're touching, we are fixing it up. It is going, and then we will take over the maintenance, water the grass and all of that, which is more than what you have to do for an easement.
Well, sounds like with IHOP, then we're in agreement. We just may not know we're in agreement because I heard IHOP says you can have a temporary construction easement. You're just not going to take any of our land. Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
And that's what we're
The
asking
ribbon
for.
sculpture goes on their property on top of a utility easement. So are we taking the land? Well, kind of. If a neighbor puts a shed on my land, they're taking part of my land to put that structure there. They might look at it that way.
Yeah.
Anybody have a connection to Twinkle Inn? We met with him. He's always around. Matt's had some success with him, but it's always tomorrow. So.
What's his name?
Barat Trivedi.
How do you say it? Let me, says it, Matt.
Barat?
Yeah. We walk in, he knows who we are. We've been there enough.
I think it's him and his wife that both own it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the wife.
Whereas then Twinkle Inn is straight across the street from like Olive Garden, IHOP area, right there. It's right on the corner of.
That way.
Yeah. Our little road, Little Pete's.
Little Pete's.
Yeah,
Little
Little
Pete's
Pete's
corner.
corner. Right next door to you, to where you used to own. Yeah.
See it?
And he's always worried about that. So,
I don't know if you remember, Gail, when we were doing the annexation petition, it was hard to get in with him, and we finally got both of them in one place at one time, and we're able to get that. Correct.
or he goes on vacation every other week, so.
Well, Chuck, to respect your time, you have 10 minutes and you're out.
Yep.
Anything you'd like to cover before you have to go?
Chuck, we really probably. The Universal.
Universal, we probably need to, yeah, we can go through the Universal. Everything else is, I mean, I'd like to be a part of the transportation in segment 7 and 8, but it is what it is. I'm gonna throw this out here just because you guys have had the discussion and I haven't had really an opportunity to say anything. If we go and I don't know what direction we're even leaning towards on this, because there's been so many different things discussed. If we go to start looking at paying people for their easements, then we're basically setting a precedence for segment 2, segment 1, segment 4, segment 5, segment 6. In this case here, we may have 27 or call it 20 people. The next segment, we're going to have 100% of the people that we're going to have to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, that's definitely not an option I would want to go down. I don't have the right answer, but it seems like to me we're pushing and pushing and pushing to get a project started in January, and we're not ready for the project to start in January, period. And that's my opinion on this and how I feel about it. and I don't know. Makes me very nervous, and being a stakeholder as well as a board member, I would have a really difficult time with anybody trying to, go through a condemnation process on my property, even with the, financial money. So just my 2 cents.
Well, get in line, get your attorney, because we're headed that way.
Well, you don't have to do anything on my property. I mean, it's already done. All you gotta do is throw the duct tank in. Everything else is already done. Power lines are underground. I'm good to go. So, okay, let's go ahead and move on to Universal, if everybody's okay with that.
So, but very quickly with Universal, you'll get a second sheet with it's got a bunch of numbers that are on there. It shows the outpouring of money in support of Universal and all their tactics to get as many of these signed. As you see, we started in February. We have all the way to October posted. On the very left-hand side is when they put in their bid, or they were selected, and then they gave us an estimate of what it would cost. Actual hours are in the green, and that actually has some of October forecasted in it. So you saw that overall their firm expected to spend 736 hours on it. The actual hours are a little over 1,000 hours, 1,126. Estimated versus actual dollar amounts are there. So 57,000 was the estimated on it and the contract awarded, knowing that some of these negotiations may take a little bit longer or shorter, but we were there. Roughly right now, they're at that bottom number there shows your $24,968.52 that they have done the work for and have not been paid for. What we're asking for is a contract amendment for $35,000. That's to cover the costs to make sure that we can keep them on board to the end. As you see, October forecasted dropped really far down. We also went line by line. You can see the rate hours that are there, $65 to $85 an hour. Tim, which presented to you in the spring, did a very nice job of saying, hey, my time, it's part of my business. And he cut many of his months. He was an hour, 3 hours, or a couple hours considering he was the highest rate. We also asked about the GIS mapper and manager. That is the neat mapping functions that we get these things there. And we asked them to reevaluate his costs on there. He came back with today a roughly $4,000 inversion of that versus the manager versus a mapper. There's some specialty stuff that's there where the manager could have subbed it down. So we are super thankful for the suggestion of that. We would appreciate your support and the amendment. All the documentation went to Paul today, and they have the same copies of the stuff that you're there. And below there is the timeline for their task and where they're at. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions related to this? No? Paul, do we need to wait for you to review everything before we can take a vote to approve the amendment?
No, the contract is with the city. So I think
Okay.
Michael was just presenting it just for preview, but it's the city's the contracting party, not the CID.
All right, so the CID just has to have a motion and a second and approval for the financial responsibility.
It's part of the project. So I mean, if you want to, you can, or any objection to it, but it's just part of the CID project.
Right, but it's additional funds that are being spent, right? So wouldn't we need to agree to those additional funds? Otherwise, the city could just go ahead and start writing blank checks out of the CID, right?
Oh, don't say that.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
early.
We're not attempting to do that by any means. While we recognize that, yeah, and I'm just jumping in here to make sure we're all clean. I think we're just looking for approval that the city utilize that aspect.
That's,
Because it is more than what was approved for the original construction contract.
Let's just get board approval if we could, Chuck.
yeah, I agree. Okay, then with that being said, can I have let's see, anybody want to make a motion in regards to the approval of the amendment to the Universal Field Services contract?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thanks, Billy.
Second.
Second, Brian, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Letters to property owners. Holly,
That was something that you guys had asked us to hold off on sending. The last time we were ready to send that, the board was hesitant and wanted to utilize negotiation tactics. So I'm just checking back in to see if we're at a point where with those that have said no, we're ready to take that next step with a letter.
And with that being said, the last time that she proposed that was October 30th. We would be proposing to send that out tomorrow, being November, or on November 1st, not tomorrow. And then we would also ask that we have no later than this date, being the next board meeting, some response. So it's a pretty fast turnaround, but it's the first step of saying we're really serious.
has the board had an opportunity to review those yet? That letter, just for our purview?
I have the letter here and some of the members.
And this is the same one that you emailed, right?
Yeah.
It is the same one.
Single. The black is
I
out.
think you misstepped, Michael, on the last time we proposed doing this. You said it was October 30th and
It was August.
thank you.
Today.
I just don't want anybody confused.
Sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Does the board want to have any further discussion in regards to this? How do we want to move forward on this?
Extra copy. Extra copy.
I'm sorry. I emailed everything. Trying to say, it's the end of the year. Chad told me no more ink.
No budget surplus.
I
mean, I don't know what it would hurt to send that out. We delayed last time, right? Because we were making a concerted effort to go out face to face and didn't want to get backed up with, I just got this nasty letter from you. Why would it, so. Something's got to keep going.
The only provision in the letter, just worth something to flag is no property owners are receiving payment for any easements within this project. So I guess at this point in time, that's true.
And it may stay true.
And it may stay true, but it's in there. So just a heads up for those that haven't read it for a while, maybe.
Yeah, I think based on conversations today, if there is a contemplation of paying an amount or negotiating amounts, then I would modify that statement.
I apologize, everyone, but I have to hop off, so I'm going to turn over to Brian.
Thanks,
Thank
Chuck.
you. You guys.
We're discussing, do we want to send that out tomorrow?
I see a couple typos, but I'll address that later. So. Okay, no property owners are receiving payment. So just delete that sentence. Right? Delete the sentence that says no property owners are Just so we're not committing to that. Does that make sense to
Yeah,
everybody?
that letter is what we had before. I haven't made revisions to where we're at now.
But isn't it true today that nobody's receiving money?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
That's what I'm saying.
And that was never the intention.
And that was my understanding, that at that time, that was where the board was going forward, is that there wasn't going to be an intent to pay, that if a person doesn't sign, it would just be voided. So that's why that sentence was in there. So I think the
Well-
conversations are different, and maybe that should be removed.
Yeah, you were out of the room,
I
but
disagree.
Chuck stated that he was very opposed to that. I think he raised a very good point. You start paying any property owners on this, you've got a condemnation. You're setting a precedent for the rest of the.
Oh, for sure.
You were out of the room when he said that.
Yeah,
I don't know where the rest of the board, but it was Chuck statement.
yeah.
Yeah, so.
Well, and I feel the same way. So I don't want anybody to think I was advocating for this, because it is the worst, like, you know, 0 dark 30 type of an answer to our.
But it's something that needs to be considered.
Yeah.
Okay, out there.
Mhm.
I guess my question would be is, what is the impact of that letter gonna be? Is it gonna make a difference? Will people get that letter?
I think it might get 1 or 2 or 3 attention, or really be like, hey, the end of the road is here and I've waited on the sideline to the end to see what the city was gonna do. One way or another, but you know, I appreciate you highlighting that. I want it to be very well said, especially on the record. Every single negotiation I did, I said, we are not paying, we will not pay, and it's very, very firm on that.
I think this project ends if you start that. A little bit.
Yeah.
The rest of the address and to be, like you face so.
Yeah.
And I think the letter is important, you know.
Yeah,
I do too.
My owner would hold out till he saw that letter,
okay.
just knowing him.
Yeah,
Well, they're, okay, it's fine.
they're serious.
Yeah.
I had a few people say they wanted to be the last to sign.
Yes.
And this too. I don't know if that's true.
Well, then leave it like it is, right? It sounds like, and just thank you, everybody, for indulging the conversation on condemnation. I want everybody to be aware of what the opportunities are, right? So in case there was the mindset of, yeah, maybe we should pursue that on a parallel track too, but it is going down a hellhole on many fronts. So it's certainly not something I'm in favor of doing either. It's just wanted to explore all the options. So I would be in favor of sending these letters.
I would be in favor.
Yeah, and just leave them as is then. I'll leave the letter as is. There's missing a hyphen in some there, so, but other than that,
Where it is.
I'll let you. Okay,
Does everybody agree with that? Consent.
or maybe, no hyphen necessary, actually, but I'll get it to you, Cheryl.
Well, I'm usually that way too, so I can't believe I didn't catch.
Okay, plan of finance recap. Todd? You ready?
I am here. Yeah, I had to get my buttons turned off there. We also have with us Sarah and Sid from Gilmore and Bell. And so this will be part of the conversation. I'll let them introduce themselves here in a little bit, but as the board will recall, Gilmore and Bell has been retained to serve as bond counsel for the bond issue. So they've been kind of working diligently behind the scenes. Since our last meeting at the end of September, you'll recall the board's discussion was given our desire to use a 30-year amortization of the bonds, that we would need to use an issuer for the bonds other than the CID. And so I've had a couple of conversations with Dennis Wiggins with the Taney County Partnership. I know Sarah has been in contact with Mr. Wiggins as well. And basically in principle, the Taney County IDA is interested and willing to serve as the issuer of the bonds. So that's been a positive development. Actually, as the mayor knows, last week, the city of Branson did approve at least first reading of the ordinance that would allow
basically provide permission for the IDA, the Taney County IDA, to be the issuer of the bonds. So that's well underway. Also, Paul and I have received a due diligence questionnaire, about a 9 or 10 page questionnaire from Gilmore and Bell, and we'll be working through that to provide those responses back as well. Also, tomorrow, Sarah, Sid, myself, and Paul have another conference call to kind of follow up on some details of the bond documents. So we're kind of continuing to move that forward. And then basically, and I'm kind of jumping into Sarah and Sid's territory here, but basically the next item is going to be a go-to-market resolution that we're asking the board to approve. And that's just kind of the next step in the process of moving the bond issue forward. So I'm gonna pause there and see what questions anybody from the board has, and then give an opportunity for Sarah and Sid to kind of introduce ourselves.
Okay.
So I guess with that, Brian, Sarah and Sid, why don't I kind of let you guys introduce yourself, and you can kind of fill in some of the blanks.
Sarah?
You went off mute. I thought you were going to jump in there.
No.
Sarah Granath with Gilmore and Bell. Good to see you again, Mr. Mayor. And we have, as Todd mentioned, been working on the various documents for an issuance by the IDA as contemplated. The resolution that you all have before you, I believe it's the next item coming up, is to authorize Todd, Sid and I at Gilmore and Bell, and then Paul as needed to proceed forward with the documents related to the issuance, including an offering document that will contain various information about the district and the city and the IDA. And so that is what we're working on. Sid, I don't know if you had anything else to add there.
The only thing, we're not approving any particular terms at this time. This is just basically put together the authorization to put together the documents so that we can work on getting a financing presented. We will be coming back to the board, maybe here with your next meeting being November 13th, try to be ready to approve substantially final form documents at that point. It'll depend on how the due diligence goes and everything. We're hoping to get documents out yet this week for everybody to start reviewing. And but we will be back at a later date to get specific authorization of what the financing might look like in more detail.
Well, I don't know of any reason why we wouldn't ask them to move forward. Is there?
I don't believe so.
Need
So
a
I think
motion?
we need I don't think.
Paul, do we need a motion?
For the
this?
resolution,
Which is allowing them to move forward?
yes.
Okay. Anybody have any questions over any of this? I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution for them to move forward. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Brian.
Yep. Thanks, Todd.
Paul, this is Cheryl, sorry. Since Chuck had to leave, will Brian be able to sign this in Chuck's absence?
Yeah, I don't know if Chuck's name was on there, but Brian
It
can
was
just
not.
sign. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We've covered item 9, right? So item 10 was a discussion regarding transportation. Did we leave that on there? Was that the trolley discussion that we may have tabled? I think it is.
Has anybody had any thoughts or discussions on that? when I slept on it, I looked at it from 10,000 feet. And not for downtown, not for 76, but for overall, to have continuity in that traffic pattern. I'm seeing more and more positives. And I don't know why, but at least in my little brain, if it was a $5 all-day pass, the numbers we've been provided from the Sparky, it appears that this would not be a negative cash effect. And it would, from a city point of view, it would at least take a step into providing transportation. I can see employees using this, right? $5 a day. Because some of them pay Uber, right, to go to work. So other than the legal side, because we're gonna have an attorney, actually, Paul's still there.
I'm here.
Yeah, so Paul is legal on for both entities, so there's an issue.
That's no longer true, Mayor.
Have
I
you
no
been
longer, was not fired. I resigned. I don't know who's representing the downtown CID.
Okay.
Or what their future holds since they expire in about a year.
Yeah, so then you representing this board between 76 legal side and downtown legal side, I would like to think we could overcome whatever the legal issues are, right? Because they're two different entities. If that could be overcome, then I'm just seeing it as a bigger positive. But I'd love to hear your input.
I guess for me, I don't know enough information to say what's the pros and cons and all that. I mean, it's all looks good, but what does that mean for us? What does that mean for the CID?
Yeah,
I don't know those kind of stuff, yeah.
Just conceptually, downtown has their routes. And I know at one time, our 76 CID had discussions of some transportation. So and I don't know what the process would be, but generally speaking, if we took the trolley model and extended the route into this legal entity, 76, and I don't know if it would be a joint agreement or how that would be structured, but at the end of the day, have our downtown trolley system, have it expanded to include the entire strip. And like I said, I just threw out that. Do you have input there, Steve?
Yeah,
please.
In past, the challenge was, I think one of the first things you would need to do is have a study done.
Yeah.
See if it works. In the past, the concern and challenge was the trolley gets stuck in traffic. It does not have a way to move unless it moves in the center lane, which was a safety issue. But the trolley gets stuck in traffic. And so the schedule on 76 is really very disruptive. So you can't keep that schedule because of, depending on how much traffic flow is not going through there. Downtown's pretty contained and they're able to work around that. But it would seem to me that if you were looking at that, one of the first things to do would be get a traffic study done to find out if that has changed or not from what it was in the past.
Do you know when that was done?
I don't.
You know who did it? Was it city?
Well, that's Leanne and see if she remembers what they did. Now, I know CFS was looking at a trolley system on Highway 76, but they were also looking at a way to have a trolley not move within the regular traffic flow. They were actually trying to figure out for the center lane, all of that would work. I'll ask Ray and see, but.
Don't buses deal with that in every city? I'm thinking buses, like, I'm thinking of downtown Chicago, right? There's buses that have schedules.
Yeah.
I would think that the company could design what an acceptable, I don't know. But I guess at this point, you raised really good points, like, right, how do you keep a schedule? I guess I would ask a bus company the same thing.
Yeah.
Because there's traffic in downtowns all over the country. But I guess we're just trying to find out, is it something like a traffic or a trolley feasibility study? Because we're all about feasibility studies here, you know? So if we were to entertain an idea like that, maybe is that something that we could share in, right? Between the downtown CID, this SID and the city. And if we split the costs, maybe I'm throwing out
Yeah.
spaghetti at the wall here, but if we could talk about that and look at the feasibility of something like that, is that something that you guys would be supportive of?
So, Paul, did you look and see if the petition, the CID petition allows the CID to run a trolley system?
So the 76 CID petition, the original one does have, as part of the services, ironically, it had trolley stops and public transit elements. That was for, I guess it's called segment 3. The other thing to keep in mind is,
Yeah, so that, but that was for the construction of trolley stops. But could the CID operate a trolley system?
well, trolley stops and then a separate item for public transit elements, and there's no other prohibition in the petition. The other thing to keep in mind is the downtown CID. So I don't know if they would have objection to me negotiating with them on the 76 behalf or not. I assume, but I don't know, that they will retain new counsel. But just as a matter of public information, the downtown CID expires, I think, in April of 26. And more importantly, the sales tax expires. And so they're going to have to revote the sales tax, even if the term gets extended. And so that wouldn't happen till, a year and a half, 2 years. So just keep that time frame in mind.
So what about if, let's just say, for instance, if the mayor went and talked to the downtown SID board, their SID, and found out, what's their appetite? And if we could do kind of a 3-way split on a potential feasibility study.
What if you operated in a separate, and you had a trolley stop that most likely.
That's another
you don't have to transfer the people. You don't have the same, you don't have the same trolley going downtown in their vote. So if you had a trolley stop where, just like at the bus stop, people would get off and those trolleys would operate separately. I don't know that you would need the downtown situation in that, but it would be the operation of 76 SID or the city to handle the 76 side.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I'm thinking the consultant could help us
Yeah, exactly.
identify all
And you're
that.
right, they do move in cities from that point through there. And CFS did it. We had a trolley stop in front of Bresley's. We had a stoplight in front of Bresley's. It didn't happen. But in fact, the right of way is still in place there for a trolley stop in front of our theater. But there is a way to do that. It just, in my mind, it needs to be very efficient. And if it works from that point through there, it is something that will be very satisfying to customers.
Yeah, I would think Jeremy, the Great River, that's what they do, this kind of study. Jeremy?
We might have to do an RFQ on
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. Say that one more time. I apologize.
I would think that you guys, that's kind of stuff that you guys do, the study, this kind of traffic study from, the request of what they're trying to do in terms of this trolley stop and everything like that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we know what the ADT is. We know what the average daily traffic is already, and we've looked at several aspects in different places along the corridor, but we have not done a full-on study of the corridor. But yes, that is something that our transportation group offers for sure.
Yeah. So then to move this forward, would the city send out an RFQ for this?
Oh, whoops, I turned myself off. I mean, you could absolutely, I mean, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. We would entertain doing an additional services based on, our familiarity with the corridor and our work in the corridor currently. If we needed to add that as a service, we could certainly give you a proposal to do so and change our contract in that way. If you choose to keep it separate, there's a little catching up that anybody would have to do, I think, on what's going on. Just being fair.
Yeah.
We'd have to quote it, wouldn't we? Wouldn't we have to send it out for,
Holly, I believe you would have to be over 50,000, right? So.
unless Great River's willing to do it for 49.9, I'm just saying.
I can sure
And if it
check
was
with my, I can sure
29.9, we
check
could
with
vote
my
on it
guys
now.
next door.
Would it make sense to wait till after we open the bids to do it?
Open which bids?
Well, so the CID, remember the 76 CID didn't have any. Okay, so if we, last time Todd told you interest rate was coming down, so that'll help, that could help a little bit on the back end, but the nut crack is $12 million. And so, if we open the bids and they came in lower than we thought, well, it might make sense to do it. Otherwise, the only way it works, you can do every study in the world, but the only way it works then is if somebody else funds it or it makes money. Okay, otherwise you're taking money away from the end of the project. Right? So. I guess it depends on when you think you're gonna open bids. So.
That would have been my comment is I think it's something definitely worth exploring, but would want information like what is your ridership downtown? You know, and what does that equate to for that population at $5 a person? And then we can maybe speculate what it might bring, what's it cost to operate, all of those things. But I do think the timing is ideal right now for that same reason, because what if we spend, I don't know, 50 grand, 75 grand on a study and it comes back, it's gonna cost X amount of dollars. And I couldn't feel good saying, yeah, let's spend that money when I don't know even how much money these two segments we're working on are gonna cost. And when to kick it in and so on. So
Yeah.
I just think the timing's not ideal.
Okay, I was just, we were just, collaborating and trying to think, how do we keep things moving on parallel tracks? And really, the study would take a while to do, and it would take a while to put out the RFQ for it and to get the responses and then score the responses. So this would be months before the study could even start. And then it takes a while for them to do the study and, collate the results, et cetera. So, but if there's no appetite, I don't want to force it. It's just the other conversation starter for this was the renewal of the downtown tax. And if they knew that there was opportunities, to continue on with their trolley service and maybe look at making more revenue for it, maybe that would help them in their decision-making on their tax renewal, et cetera. So it's just, I guess we're always looking at ways to try and break down the silos, and especially you're on the same street. It's just called something, I mean, it's just a little different, but you know what I mean? To the visitors, it's one Branson. And so we thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity here. And we've seen the numbers of Sparky. And Sparky right now is provided for free, which I'm like, I hyperventilated when I saw that, because I was like, oh yeah, I guess it does say free all over the back of the trolleys. But just to charge $3 or $4 or $5, which people pay, right, in tourist areas to use public transportation like that, and it's a fun attraction on its own, the money-making potential is significant. So I want, in combination with leveraging their tax that they charge, right? And the tax that you guys charge. So just an idea, we just wanted to bring the idea to you and see if there's an appetite, but certainly not forcing anything.
I think it is a good idea. I think it's something worth pursuing. I agree on timing, and can we reach out to another community such as Pigeon Forge? I don't know if that's city funded or how that they're trying, but I mean, when you take somebody that looks like us, walks like us, they have you see that trolley everywhere, every time I visit, they just expanded their service into Gatlinburg. So, you don't have to drive and, driving between the two areas.
Right.
So maybe, there's some information we could ask them for. I say, I don't know if that's a city, I don't know if that's a city run.
I have no idea.
They may be able to provide us some great numbers in a similar tourism situation.
But
Yeah,
they do, and I don't know how that works either.
Appetite, always open to that. That's all.
Okay, I wasn't really feeling that vibe, I'm just telling.
Eureka Springs charges $6 for an adult all-day pass, $10 for a 2-day pass. So it'd be interesting to go find out how it works.
Yeah.
I could just add to my previous answer, there's no prohibition in the petition for the CID, but as you all know, the CID provides services within its boundaries. So Kathy mentioned, you know, a three-legged stool, the city, the 76 and the downtown CID. So we'd have to navigate that and figure out how that looked like, you know, who the parent was, versus the 76 CID being deemed to provide transit services outside its boundaries and vice versa for the downtown CID.
Yeah.
But those would just be the legal brainstorming that would happen depending upon who's deemed the operator of the trolley.
Okay.
So Paul, thank you for saying that, because I think just to even get this ball rolling, I didn't know that we were gonna run across something where it said CID's document says this, no, it's not possible, so let's not waste any more time on it. But if I'm hearing you say that, yes, there's gonna be issues, but there's solutions to these issues because of the different legal entities, then that just gives us a little bit of wind under our wings to move forward.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting going back to the, you know, the 2015, 2016 original petition where, you know, the trolley stops was expressly mentioned and, you know, almost 20% of the then anticipated improvement was designated, you know, for public transit. Well over $250,000 was $366,000 was anticipated for trolley stops. So, you know, if the three parties are interested, then hopefully the attorneys for the three can figure out a way to make it happen.
Fair enough.
The reason that those were mentioned in that original was because we were trying to get Tiger funds or raise funds or build funds. And those were it's the multimodal part of it that they required.
Yeah, makes sense.
Hmm.
Okay.
Might be something like someone putting money from the state, might be something from the state side of the future.
Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to give you clarification on that.
Okay.
Discussion on segments 7 and 8. I think that's carryover from the last time too, right?
Yeah, so our board and what we're hearing from the community is existing segment 7 and 8 are less attractive than we would like. Well, that's politically correct. So we were looking at possible ideas to start moving some of those rocks to address that. When I brought it up last time, I believe Gail said, when you all run the numbers of how much tax will be generated in 7 and 8, it was peanuts or maybe a bag full of peanuts.
It's in 2016, so the city said in total, it was 110,000 a year.
Okay,
And which ranks, well, they just rank way below the other 6 segments. So
you said 210,000 a year?
110, but that's 2016.
Yeah.
It works today.
Take that up 25%.
What's gone in since 2000? Yeah. I don't think.
No.
So we could never figure out how to pay for 30 million with 110,000.
Yeah.
Everything.
Well, and this may not be enough to go down that road, but one thought was if there was and I know it costs a lot of money to put a SID together. And it's difficult getting signatures, I'm told. Maybe get with that corridor in that section, talk to some of those owners and see if it made any sense for CID, and if it was 110,000 a year, if that money was used for maintenance or improving, updating. I won't get into this because we don't have the time, but I'll be proposing here pretty soon to our board about a plan of helping with some of the properties along that corridor. But I think after thinking it through and bringing it up, I think I'm confident in saying this board right now has their hands full with what they're doing. And there really isn't an appetite or an economic advantage for this CID to consider segment 7 and 8, unless I'm way off base. 7 and 8 is going to be 10 years down the road.
So I think at least, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the appetite's most certainly there. I mean, I'm of the same camp. Why couldn't we just have done that one first, right? That's the entryway to the city and it looks terrible. The first impression, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But, you know, the numbers didn't make sense at that time. But yeah, I think in my opinion, I'm not speaking for everybody, our hands are full until the point that we get segments 1 and 2 underway.
Yeah.
At that point in time, maybe then we can breathe and say, okay, what can we do to help? And you've maybe done something with your board in between now and then. That helps to a path to progress or a path forward. That's my take.
How do the other board members, how do you feel?
I feel the same way. I mean, yeah.
So then if we can, let's just agree that the idea is still viable. And when we catch our breath, we can readdress that.
Yeah, most certainly.
Okay.
In like a hotel and a giant welcome to Branson. Added to that highway. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, well, maybe there'll be a developer we work with too, doesn't become a SID and do some type of incentive for that. Be great.
At those economic development sessions, wasn't there some discussion about the city establishing a TIF there to encourage development? Is that still on the table?
Everything's on the table.
Oh, okay, because I thought that one personally sounded like the most viable because we need developers to convince us that there is more tax revenue
Yeah.
available
Yeah.
for other things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Is there any introduction of any new business? Nope. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You got a second? I got Mike Patel's phone number.